President Trump is on a mission. That mission is to win the midterm elections. And in order to do that, it looks like Trump is going after affordability hard. So we're going to talk about all the announcements this week. We are talking banning institutions, $200 billion in MBS, cap on credit cards at 10% interest, and yes, even Powell's indictment, plus 2 bonuses that I think are coming. And we're going to have this conversation with the one and only Anna Kelly. How you doing, Anna?
I'm doing great. What a great news cycle, right, for real estate investors and for just about anyone with all of the new announcements coming out. So it'll be an exciting topic for sure.
Absolutely. So let's just go in the order, at least the order that I saw them come. And that means we start with banning institutions. Generally speaking, it is believed that they consider anybody who owns 1,000 single family homes. So that's the limit. And according to Trump's post, he is going to not allow them to buy any more. So at least in the first draft of this, Anna, it doesn't sound like he's forcing them to sell, just stop them from growing. What do you think? Is this a good idea?
You know, my gut reaction is 2 things. And, you know, it's hard to not sound political no matter what. You know, we're going to get hate on both sides and hopefully some love on a little bit of both sides as well. But when you're talking about, you know, executive orders, it's political, but it has real impact. And so just, you know, my gut reaction is one, in a fundamentally free capitalist society, banning businesses from doing anything. As someone who's more conservative and libertarian, I would say maybe not fully in either of those camps, but I don't like. I think that we should be able, in a country that is free and capitalistic, to continue to buy, you know, as much real estate as we want, or create any kind of companies that can create some type of value for the people. With that said, it is very good optics for the president to, and I think this is more about optics than reality of what it will do, to say, hey, the big bad greedy hedge funds are why housing is unaffordable. It's easier to put the blame somewhere else than to say we've structurally created over the last several decades a housing unaffordability that really we all need to take ownership for. Policies on both Democrats and Republicans have made housing more unaffordable over time, but they're not ever going to say that, no matter who the party is. So it's easier to blame the big guy. The reality is the number of large institutional investors compared to the total ownership of housing stock is extremely low. And I don't think it's going to make any real impact nationally on affordability. If anything, a lot of these institutional investors have bought homes to rent. And because there's so many available to rent in certain areas, because they really have not been nationwide buying up houses, there's pockets where they've really gone in and bought a lot of like build to rent communities. But honestly, because of the number of housing available in build to rent, it's actually pushing rents down in some areas rather than up. And so I don't think it's a great policy. I don't think it's going to move the needle much, if at all, but it looks really good to the constituents who are saying we have a housing affordability problem. And he wants to be the president that said, I'm caring about it. I'm doing something about it. And this is one of the reasons we're going to go after the big guys. And, you know, the other thing with the optics has always been that the Republicans line the pocket of the big money, and that the Democrats line the pocket of the poor. And so for him to come out with any policies as a Republican president that kind of speaks to that, not necessarily his base, but kind of tells them, we care about you. The optics is what he's really going for. And so people that don't know better might think this is tremendous and it's wonderful and it's going to keep my rents down and allow me to afford a house. I don't think it's really going to.
Yeah, again, I think this is all about winning the midterm elections. He knows he has a weakness in his platform, affordability, and he's doing everything he can. I 100% believe it's optics. And this is actually, you know, I might be wrong, but I think this was something first Elizabeth Warren pushed, right? Keep institutions, or AKA Wall Street, out of single family homes. Yeah. And the fact that Trump, not Biden, is pushing for this just shows that he is trying to reach across the aisles. It is optics, right? I can already hear, I mean, the quote was, People live in homes, not corporations. That's a great slogan.
Yeah.
And he can repeat that everywhere. But again, if you zoom out, A, institutions own less than 2% of homes. B, institutions have been net sellers, not net buyers the last 12 months. So they're shrinking already and not buying.
Yeah.
And there are only a couple of locations that are highly concentrated, Atlanta and Jacksonville being two at the top of the list. But yeah, this is optics. But again, a stated goal of a politician is to win the next election. So,
absolutely.
This is step one.
And part of that too, I think you bring up a really good point with Elizabeth Warren, and there's people that love this about Trump, and there's people that absolutely hate it about Trump. He is not just alienating one group of people, right? But the reality is, when you have a society that is so polarized, and we're there, right? It's about 50-50 that are left and 50-50 that are right. But you've got the more extremes on both sides have kind of risen up, and then they're kind of losing some favor to some extent. But when you have this much political divide and division in the country, historically, you either come up with some middle ground solutions, and you try to play nice to at least appease enough in the middle that you'll continue to get reelected, or you end up with something like civil war, right? And so he doesn't want that. And so conservatives are really upset that he is basically going against free capitalism in the things like let's ban institutions, and the things like let's ban how much you can charge for credit cards, right? It's like telling corporations what they can and can't charge, and instead of letting the market kind of determine that. But I think he almost has no choice. And this isn't being a pro-Trump, always Trumper kind of person. I'm not, clearly not. But what we saw with the rise of Mamdani in New York City was people at the bottom saying, we don't care what the solutions are. You give us more stuff, you make it affordable, and we'll give you a chance. And so the younger population is moving either more towards socialistic types of policies because they're tired of buckling under unaffordability, and they blame the Republicans for it. And Trump hasn't appeared to do a whole lot that's impacted them. Or you end up going more moderate. And I saw a survey that came out, I think Monday morning. I just briefly read it, and it was talking about the political changes of the younger generation. And actually, rather than moving far left and far right, the vast majority of the younger generation, like 18 to young mid-20s, is wanting a moderate third way, not liking either party. And so I think President Trump is astute enough to say, yeah, I may not be as conservative as the conservatives like, but we have no choice. If we don't want to go to socialism and not just lose this election, but lose the freedom of the country, I'm going to have to go a little bit more middle, and I'm going to have to give away some free stuff and appear to the base that I'm doing more to make their lives economically better, or we may be going down a bad path. So love him or hate him, I think that's what he's trying to do with these policies that seem to be anti-capitalistic, taking control. Republicans have historically been less government control, get out of our business. And he's moving toward a lot of deregulation. But at the same time, what we saw last week was these new things that are like, let's regulate capitalism with credit cards and with corporate things. So it's a big move. And I think we need to understand the why and the big picture beyond just the nuance of, are these things going to make a difference and be effective today?
Well, again, I think there's a couple of things there. Again, I think this is all about winning a midterm election. Two, I think he understands that I think both this and the credit cards will be struck down by the Supreme Court. It's just not how we're done. But he doesn't care. He's trying to win an election. Right?
Yes.
It's the optics. Okay. And the last thing I've really come to think is, if I were to boil down what I see going on in politics today, I think the two sides are really A, give me free stuff, or B, take your hands off my stuff.
Right.
I really think it's just that simple, right? There's a side of the aisle that says, give me free stuff, and they will believe anybody who promises free stuff. And then there's the other side that says, take your hands off my stuff.
Yeah.
I think it all boils down to that, but that's neither here nor there. Let's get to step number two. Step number two from Trump in this march towards winning the midterms and affordability was allowing or asking or mandating or whatever you want to call it, Fannie and Freddie, to deploy up to $200 billion buying mortgage-backed securities. That announcement happened on Thursday. caused mortgage rates briefly on Friday to drop below 6%. They posted 5.99 before repricing.
Yeah.
So that clearly worked very quickly. What do you think about that mandate?
Yeah, I think that that one could be more than just optics. I think that number one, it makes the mortgage market say, hey, if the government's going to backstop more mortgages, then we have a little bit less risk in those mortgages, especially if the government wants to push, which I think is coming, more first-time home buyer programs and housing affordability programs that are going to have a cost to the American people, but could theoretically make housing more affordable. It doesn't mean prices will go down. It could actually drive prices up. But if the government's subsidizing more of that down payment, more of mortgage insurance and things of that nature, then it tells the markets themselves that those that are setting rates that we don't need quite as much of a risk premium on these rates. And so you've got your base rate. They want to return above the U.S. Treasury rate to buy mortgage-backed securities, but they also have this term premium, like a little bit of a better return for holding something long term. But then they have this risk premium, and that risk premium spread above the benchmark can be pretty volatile up and down. And so I think you've got about 0.3 to 0.5% play in that risk premium from different statistics I've read. But what it says is, basically people don't understand the mechanism, and I don't understand it fully, with all fairness, but at a very high level, if Trump cannot get the FOMC, the Fed, to lower interest rates, one of the things that he can do to force the long end to come down a little bit is to use the fact that the government is currently over Fannie and Freddie. They are these GSC government entities. They're independent entities, but they've been under the control of the U.S. government.
Conservatorship. Yeah, that's what they call that.
Conservatorship since the GFC. And so essentially he has the power, it may be challenged in, courts or whatever, but right now the executive has the power to be able to make purchases and basically actually impact rates by saying, we are going to backstop mortgages and lower that risk premium. So it's his way to kind of trump Powell, no pun intended, to get rates down, even if the Fed doesn't cut interest rates. And I think it showed that he was somewhat successful with the speech. When they actually start to do it, I think it will cause those long-term rates to come down just a little bit, barring anything else in the economy that can drive them up, of course. But I think this could actually be a good move for housing affordability on Trump's part.
Yeah, and I've done a little bit of digging because, again, 200 billion sounds like a lot. Assuming it actually happens, it'll be consumed or complete probably within 3, maybe 4 months. So this is 200 billion sounds like a lot until you realize we do about 1.7 trillion in origination. So, my next question is, when's the next tranche? It looks like Fannie and Freddie, with no changes to the current rules, can go as high as about 440 billion under the rules. So I would fully expect them to eventually hit that target. And then the question, well, exactly. That'll be step 2. The step 2 is, okay, we hit the limit. Now let's change the rules and let's go to $1 trillion. So net, I don't think we've seen the end of this. I think Trump, like a lot of presidents, some is good, more is better. And I think this is already showing signs of working. And I would expect there to be a $1 trillion line item, sometime next year for mortgage-backed security. So there you go. Well, let's get to credit cards. Again, talked about it a little bit earlier, but at least to me, it came out of left field. Trump saying that for the next 12 months, credit card companies need to cap their interest payments at 10%. The average for the country is 20, but with some people paying 28, 29, and dare I say even 30. There are some wild credit card interest rates out there. What say you? What do you think? Any unintended consequences here?
Oh, definitely some unintended consequences. If I look at, there's a lot of ways we could go with this, so I'll try to keep it brief. But if you just look at the GDP print, that claimed we had a great GDP, and you look at consumer spending, all of the increase in consumer spending toward GDP, and it generally is 70% of GDP. So when we talk about growth and expansion of an economy, which we all want to get out of kind of the stagnating recession-like K-shaped economy for many, we want the consumer to be strong. But when you look at consumer spending, do you know almost all of the consumer spending was an increase in the cost of insurance property insurance and healthcare insurance. And so it's things that people have to spend money on. The other thing, and I just heard the stat this morning, was it was like 2.3 or 2.7% increase in consumer spending, all of which went basically to insurance and things that are necessities, not discretionary. But it's almost the exact same percentage of the increase in consumer debt that we had during that same period, 2.3 to 2.7%, somewhere in that range. And so if you look at the reality of most consumers, and again, when politics matters, it's the majority, right? Regardless of what side they're on. Most consumers are not spending more because they're healthy and they have discretionary income. They're spending more because of inflation, costing them more for the things they have to. And not only are they living check to check, which we've seen for the last couple of years, but they're increasing equally the amount that they're putting on debt. So their debt is growing. And so this is a real pain point for the vast majority of Americans, those who are not wealthy. So let's just call it the 70% that are at the bottom of the K-shaped economy. They're worried about inflation. They're mad that it doesn't seem like it's coming down under Trump because they don't understand that inflation doesn't really go down. You don't go backwards to yesterday's prices. It's just that the annual increase inflation is going down, relative. And so they haven't felt the impact of their vote for Trump or their non-vote for Trump, but their hopes that maybe our affordability would come down. And so their biggest pain point is they're putting stuff on credit. So if he has the optics that, hey, we're going to stop this and make this more affordable for the 70% of the population, they're going to be happy about that. And so it sounds really good. And I saw a post that someone made the other day, so many posts are just, you love Trump or you hate him, and there's very little in between. But they said something that I thought was really important. And it was like, this is a chess move. And this was somebody who's not like an always pro-Trump guy, but he said, it's all about optics, exactly how you open this up. Because if he can push something and say it's going to be an executive order, it puts the pressure now on the credit card companies and on Congress to act on it. Because he's saying, hey, you're charging the little guy too much. We want you to make this more affordable. And then the credit card companies look like the bad guy, right? Just like the big hedge funds that are buying up houses. And Congress, if they don't put it into law, looks like the bad guy. Well, right after I saw that post, I think over the weekend, maybe Friday, in the last couple of days, I saw a news blurb. And honestly, I didn't have a chance to delve into the article. So I just saw the headline. But it was a headline that I think the GOP, there was a senator that just pushed through legislation to try to bring to a vote on capping credit card interest. So he's saying, hey, let's do this. Now someone in Congress is coming up with a bill to say, let's put something into a law. So I think it is forcing Congress to act, hopefully forcing credit card companies to police themselves and consider coming down a little bit in the interest rates that they charge. What ends up happening ultimately, will depend. And you mentioned the courts and all of that. But if we don't get credit card interest rates down, you would continue to have unaffordability and people very discontent. But if you actually ban a rate in which you can charge people interest on debt that largely is way over an average subprime, so people who really can't afford the extra credit, but they're giving it to them anyway, what you will have is the companies will say, if I can't get a risk premium for the risk that they're going to go into bankruptcy and foreclosure and default on this debt, then we're just going to issue less debt and we're going to tighten our credit standards. And so those people that really need credit cards aren't going to be able to get them. You're going to see credit card companies closing accounts, closing their credit cards, or really drastically lowering their limits. And if they drastically lower their limit, let's say their limit's $20,000, Michael, and they don't want to extend up to $20,000 for poor credit people, that they were just charging 20% to offset those that do default, and they have to go to 10. If they slash their available credit to 10 and they already owe 15, they're going to be in default. And then they're going to charge them default rates that are 22, 26% anyway. And so I think what it's going to do is it's going to hurt those that he's meaning to help, because they're going to no longer have credit available that they need. And that might hurt them even more than the thought that they're only going to pay 10%. So I think that's a real unintended consequence that he needs to think through, and that any bill that comes before Congress, they really need to think through, is this really going to make it better, or could it actually backfire and make it worse? And if the consumer can't keep spending on credit, it will slow GDP. Consumer spending will drop even further, and that could have some unintended consequences for the economy as a whole as well.
Yeah, again, this is another one of those 100% optics. It sounds good, feels good. The average Joe doesn't know the second and third order effects, because again, as somebody who studied this stuff for a long time, this is exactly what will happen. The credit card companies, again, we're just going to wave a magic wand and say for 12 months, everybody's a max of 10%. We're just going to pretend that happens. I don't think it does, but we're going to pretend for a moment. Step one, credit card companies go in and lower rate or lower limits on nearly everybody.
Yep.
2, they cancel credit cards. 3,
Yep.
two. And then 3, they issue a lot less new credit. And to your point, what does that mean? That means retail sales, the engine of the U.S. economy, will be impacted. It'll plummet. Right. We live on credit. Our economy is based on credit. Yeah. So again, this is one of those optic things that probably feels good, plays good in the press, but you're going to suddenly have, mom and dad get letters from credit card companies saying, whoops, that Chase credit card you had that had, $20K, it's now 8. Yeah. And that, that other credit card that you kept for emergencies that has a 0 balance on it. Well, congratulations, it's closed.
Yeah.
That's going to happen.
And that can create more defaults because now people just can't pay the balances that they have. And I saw through the GFC, I've been around long enough, even with an 800 plus credit score, I had perfect credit through the GFC. I had my credit availability slashed by like 2 cards and 1 completely closed. And that was with good credit. And it's because the economy as a whole was too risky. Many people as a whole were defaulting. And so they just said, we need to lower our risk on everyone. So even though there are some different categories for prime and subprime borrowers, when it comes to systemic risk or a recession risk, for lack of a better word, or default risk on 70%, it's going to impact everybody for sure.
Yeah. Yeah. Again, this is one of those ones that plays well in the press, probably plays well when you're on stage. But when you actually step back and look at the economic impact, the second, third order, it's ugly, frankly. Yeah. So, all right, number 4. Now, depending on who you listen to or believe, this may or may not have come from Trump, but it does appear that Powell has been indicted by the DOJ for lying to Congress about this. Again, I'm on record saying this was a tactical error. This is not something that should have been done, but that's neither here nor there. What do you think about Powell indictment? What do you think?
Honestly, my first gut reaction was it disgusted me. So for any of you that say, oh, I'm a MAGA supporter, I'm not. And I've said I'm not, but I'm really going to tell you I'm not now. I think what Trump is doing is making the same. It seems a little hypocritical. I'm just going to say it, right? A lot of his beef was that he was unfairly prosecuted by political enemies. And I believe that is the case to some extent. If you
clearly
look at the records, right? Clearly, they went after him for everything possible when they couldn't impeach him, for January 6th or whatever. So, living in a free country in the United States of America, I don't want to see any leaders on either side, whether it's my president or whether it's congressmen's, spend the majority of our time and tax dollars going after political enemies who are not doing what they want. I just think America is better than that. And so, you asked me, I haven't shared my thoughts on Facebook or anybody about, about this thing, but, I don't believe that Powell is as political as some people want to say. I think he genuinely thinks he's doing the right thing in a stagflation-like economy to be slow and steady. Some say he's political. It doesn't really matter if he is or not. Taking it to the level of, I'm going to sue you over something technical you said that I don't think was the full picture. I just think gives the left even more fodder that Trump is going to go after anybody that disagrees with him. And these claims of, a dictator or a fascist or whatever, when you start to prosecute your political enemies, it doesn't look good. The optics are really, really bad. And so, first he did it to Lisa Cook. And, from what I've read, Lisa Cook, for those that don't know, is a sitting member of the FOMC. And he basically charged her through the DOJ with mortgage fraud, which they had gone after Trump for before. And from at least the evidence I've seen, she very clearly said, like, this is a second home. I'm not buying a primary. Or then she got a job in DC. And so she bought another home and said, this is a second home because of job relocation. It doesn't look like she committed fraud, but it doesn't matter. The optics was fraud. Let's get her off. He wants to put pressure on the Fed to put the people on the FOMC that will cut rates and do what he wants so that they can lower the interest on the government debt. And so he has basically shown that I'm willing to do whatever it takes to get Powell out, to get Cook out, and to stack the FOMC with people that are going to do my bidding, get rid of Fed independence. And I think getting rid of Fed independence, whether you like the Fed or not, there's things I like about them, there's things I really don't like about them. Having Fed independence is really, really critical. If you think that we need an independent Fed when there's someone on the other side of your political aisle, then you should think we need an independent Fed when there's someone on your political aisle.
Agreed.
So
Yeah.
I just think it's really bad optics. Now, if it shows up that Powell really committed fraud, sure. But from everything I've seen, I think it's a political move. I think he's going to lose the case. I don't think Powell committed perjury or fraud based on what I've seen. And I just think it was a really, really bad move on our president's part.
Yeah, it was a tactical error. And I got news from Larry Kudlow. Larry Kudlow is about as right as you can get.
Yeah.
Right. He is way on the right. This is what Larry Kudlow said yesterday. 3 things. 1, this is an exercise in futility. Basically, nothing will come of this. Number 2, you are making a martyr of Jay Powell. Not good. You're basically causing the Fed to entrench and protect its own. Stupid.
Yep.
This is all a tactical error. Again, in my opinion, if you wanted to go after Powell for this, wait till June. Wait till he's out of office. It's only 5 months away.
Right.
And number 3, and again, you got to remember, this is Larry Kudlow, Mr. Right.
Yeah.
He is a terrible Fed chair, no doubt, but he is not a criminal.
Right. Yeah. And, Kudlow, again, I've listened to a lot of Kudlow. I don't have cable news anymore, but, he's been an advisor to President Trump. He's been an advisor to multiple presidents on both sides. And he's a very smart guy. But I think, to the point that he made, I do think that this could backfire on Trump. There is a Quill Research, Danielle DiMartino Booth put out a piece maybe in November or early December and then republished it on Monday, basically saying to the Fed, like, you cannot lose Fed independence. And she's not been totally pro-Powell. She has not been. No. She's been like, Fed, you're messing up. You're making mistakes. You should have cut rates, and you're being political by not cutting rates. And so she has not been a necessarily pro-Powell or pro-Trump all the way person. But she came and basically said, if you let the Fed lose independence, you will destroy the economy of this country for decades. And she's telling those that are sitting, the way that you can legally do this, she used to be on the Fed, you can vote in the next Fed chair for a certain period of time to override what Trump wants to do when he puts a new person in and Powell gets out. So she's telling them, hold your own. And I think for those that are on the Fed who want independence, even if they think they should cut rates because employment is softening and the economy is softening when you look under the hood, for anything, they're going to go, we are not going to do it just because we are not going to let Trump win by bullying and criminalizing what we are trying to do as the best for the country, whether they're doing it or not, whether they're the best people for that job or not. They are going to, and like you said, I think Kudlow said, entrench. They're going to dig in and go, we are now going to fight Trump tooth and nail, not to give him what he wants, because we will not lose Fed independence. And so it just, I couldn't believe Monday morning or Sunday night when I read the headlines. I think it's going to backfire. And that can hurt the American people because it can keep rates from being cut when maybe they should be.
Yeah. At the end of the day, the last thing I thought about was if the bond vigilantes really thought Fed independent was going to be lost, rates would move immediately.
Yeah.
Now, thankfully, it's Tuesday. It's been 2 business days. Rates haven't moved that much. So I think even the bond market is sniffing out this is all smoke, no fire. This is going to go away. You even hear Trump now distancing himself from this. He said yesterday, I had no idea this was going on. So Scott Bessent also said,
come on.
I'm just telling you what's being said. I'm not saying I believe it. I don't believe in the tooth fairy either. but it is what's being said. And Scott Bessent was very pissed off and basically said this could hurt the market. So I think this is going to quietly go away and become a nothing burger. And let me be clear, I hope it does.
Yeah,
Because
me too.
the ramifications from this could be ugly. All right. So those are the 4 things that we know that happened in the last 7 days. I got 2 more for you that I think are coming in the next 7 to 10 days.
I'm afraid,
Number 1,
Michael.
So number 1, I fully expect there to be a large announcement around first-time homebuyers. Now, I don't know what's in it. Could be a 50-year mortgage, could be some kind of credit, should be rate buy. I don't know what it's going to be, but there will be some announcement that says we are helping first-time homebuyers.
Yeah.
And it will be big, it will be bold, it will move the needle. So that's the first thing I think is coming. What do you think?
Yeah, I agree. We already know, and Scott Bessent has been pretty open on multiple news channels that one of their main priorities is housing affordability, as it should be. And so, I know they've been working on a package. They've been a little bit tight-lipped on exactly what all that's going to be, but they've mentioned that, we need to get rates down for home buyers. We need to get supply up, which is hard for them to do unless they can incentivize people to sell their properties, i.e. lower their rates, down to maybe below 5%. They have talked a little bit about the 50-year mortgage and also mortgage portability. And so, I hope that mortgage portability becomes a real piece in America, because if we could figure out a way, if the government can figure out a way to allow people to take their mortgages with them. So I owe $300,000 at 2.5%. I want to buy a house for $500,000. I transfer my first for $300,000 at 2.5%. Maybe I get a second, for the difference. That could be a huge ability unlock supply, which is really the issue. I would sell my house potentially if I could keep my low interest rate. And I think many people would. They're locked in and can't sell because they just can't afford a much higher payment. And especially might help actually older retirees who really want to downsize, but they can't afford to have a much higher interest rate. And so I think a portable mortgage would be amazing. Whether we actually see it or not, I don't know, but I'm hopeful that that would be in the package. The other thing is, yes, first-time homebuyer assistance. Here's the thing, though. I was around in the late 90s when George Bush came out with the Community Redevelopment Act. And it was really the first home affordability issue. And I actually was in private banking and worked at Bank of America at the time. So I was primarily working with the very, very wealthy, but I sat in branch meetings, and I know that we had a big push to basically have people come in, and they would do a 2-evening, 3-hour course on budgeting and making sure that they could afford their mortgages. And once they sat through those, I think it was 5 or 6 hours, then we were able to, check that box and say, okay, we're going to give you 100% financing on your property. And the government's going to gift you, money towards your down payment. And I don't remember all the details of what the programs were, but we've seen programs like this targeting first-time homebuyers for many, many, many years. And some people would argue that Community Redevelopment Act and allowing 100% financing is really what's sparked the great financial crisis and housing prices going crazy. So with that said, I just want to caution that just because we see first-time homebuyer programs, it could actually increase the pricing of homes, because we might have even more demand for housing if the government's going to say, let's say it's 100% financing like we have with USDA mortgages today, or down payment assistance on an FHA that's still 3.5% down. That's going to spark a lot more demand, especially if they lower credit standards, which I think is going to come out in this bill. They're going to say, hey, we're going to lower credit standards, which they've already kind of teased. But I think that could make prices go up a little bit. So if that's all they do is bring first-time homebuyer programs and help people get into a house, it doesn't make their payment any better. It doesn't solve the problem that people are already living check to check.
It feels good in the moment. It feels really good in the moment.
It increases that risk premium, Michael. So, it's yes, there's more people buying, prices can go up, but if the bond market says it's poorer credit people getting houses, they're going to be worried about a repeat of the GFC, and people.
This is about the midterms, Anna. You're thinking too far ahead.
I know, but I'm just, the reality is it could backfire. And so the only way that I think you fix it is, one, the backstopping, the purchasing through Fannie and Freddie of more mortgages, but 2, you allow that mortgage portability so that you unlock supply. And barring that happening, or
Yeah.
even a 50-year mortgage. A 50-year mortgage could get the prices down, and we've toyed with that. It's not going to do a lot to really make it a whole lot better, and could create some risk down the road. So I hope we see a 50-year mortgage. People can debate that all year, all day long. The reality is most people stay in their house 5 to 10 years. So they're not
Right.
going to be stuck in that 30 or 50-year bigger interest payment over time anyway for most people. But I'd like to see one of those two options in this next bill.
Yeah, the other thing that I think is going to be slipped in here, and it's going to be positioned as helping the first-time home buyers, but let's be clear, this helps the baby boomers, is I think they're going to raise the tax-free limit, right? Today, you can take 250K if single, 500K
Yeah,
if married. I think they're going to take that to $1 million.
I hope so. I hope so.
I think that'll unlock a bunch of inventory, but I'm not sure it'll be the inventory people want, because if you think about where in the country has housing gone up $1 million, there's only a couple of spots.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think it will unlock some inventory, like, Palo Alto, California, Cupertino, California, right?
Yeah. And it could
Miami.
allow people that own in places like California, New York, that want to get out to move faster into
Yeah.
more conservative areas by being able to, have a much higher cap on their capital gain on the sale of their house too. So
Yeah.
I didn't really think of that until just now, but that could be another, it could be a reason that politically it helps some of those in the higher end to say thank you, Trump, and reelect him, while he also works on those on the lower end. To get reelected. Yeah.
All right. So here's the last thing that I think is coming. And again, it hasn't been announced, but I think this is the only way you can really fix the problem long-term. And that is, you have to create some kind of incentive to build entry-level housing like we did in the 1950s, the GI Bill in that era. Now, I don't know what that looks like. I don't know if that's grants. I don't know if that's free land. I don't know what it is. But again, there has to be a program that says, Pulte, Lennar, KB Homes, we need entry-level housing. And I would hope, I really hope this is in there. These homes can't be larger than 1,100 square feet. I hope they get really, really specific, because what we have seen for the average home, we don't need 2,300 square feet, 5 bedrooms, 3.5 baths, 2-car. I mean, come on, guys. Your idea of a starter home is ridiculous.
Yeah.
Right. We need to go back to, 3 1s and, 2 2s and stuff like that. So I hope there's something for builders, and I really do hope they cap the square footage, in my opinion. What do you think?
Yeah, and there have been some incentives like that. I will just say, like on the rental market space. So like multifamily construction over the last couple of years, if you were to build a multifamily property and you were to do it with paying prevailing wages and making them energy efficient, you were given pretty good grants, full dollar for dollar tax rebates, rather than just like 20% off your taxes. It's like dollar for dollar reduction in your tax bill as a builder. And so that really helped incentivize multifamily developers to build even in the rising interest rate environment, because they got enough tax incentives to kind of offset that.
Right.
And so I think you could do something very similar on residential, like you said. And I think, generally speaking, you talk about population and where it's going, and there's a lot of baby boomers who are selling bigger houses because they had bigger families. And today people are delaying not only home ownership, but they're delaying getting married, and they're delaying having kids. And we're at under the number of kids per family that we need to replace the existing workforce and pay taxes for those that are retiring already. But I think the average is about 2 kids, per family. So, at most you probably need a 3-bedroom house. Most people are probably not building that 4th bedroom just for guests. And so if you get back down to like a 3-bedroom, 2-bath basic size home, a lot more families could afford to move in. So yeah, I hope we see some of that, because the reality is, to your point, that the cost of construction has gone up so much, which is why our property insurance has more than doubled in many parts of the country in the last couple of years. And so even if people could afford the mortgage payment on these smaller homes, the cost to build them continues to go up, and especially with tariffs on metal and different kinds of steel, different kinds of things. But you have to look at the cost of property insurance. And so I think the only way you do that, to your point, is you build smaller houses. And so if they can incentivize the builder to build smaller houses, they're going to have to offer some kind of grants, because the reality is builders really only make their money on those that are middle income that can afford that $400,000 house.
Yep.
There's very little profit margin in the smaller homes. And so, yeah, I think that would be really good and would allow builders to be incentivized to keep building, knowing that there's going to be plenty of demand for the houses that they're building.
Love all of this. Again, folks, as we started this session, this is about President Trump winning the midterms. He is hyper focused on winning the midterms. Why? Because if he loses, two things will happen. One, he will become a lame duck president and get nothing done. And two, he will clearly be indicted, or whatever they call impeached. Clearly, the Dems will try to impeach him once again. So again, he is fighting for his political life in the last couple of years. Anna, where can people find you?
Fighting for capitalism and freedom to continue and to not move toward the socialistic side that's kind of rising up as the key players on the left. And so, I won't be all negative Trump. I think he really does care about capitalism and freedom.
I think so.
But he's definitely making moves right now that he has to in order to win the election. And so I think it's an important point to not gloss over that. You might not like some of these policies. They might not make sense, right? I don't like some of them and they don't make sense, but when you understand it really is optics, and
it's all it is.
Well, at least it will help some. Just don't be someone who says, if it goes toward my side, it's great. And if it goes to the other side, it's terrible. We've got to find some middle ground, and Trump's trying to do that, to give a little bit to everybody, regardless if they like him and where their incomes are. So great topic of discussion. Thank you for that today.
Awesome. And where can they find you?
You can find me here on your show, on social media at Anna Kelly, REI Mom, and to book a coaching or consulting appointment with me regarding wealth or real estate, you can find me at AnnaKellyInvesting.com.
Thank you so much. Have a great week.
You too.